Ralph, thank you so much for joining us today on the What is a Good Life podcast. Since having a conversation with you before, I'm really curious as to see wherever the hell you're going to take us today.
Yeah, Mark, I'm having the same curiosity. I'm half terrified, I'm half excited, which usually is the best place to start something cool from.
So, as you are aware, we jump straight in with, is there a question you're exploring as you move through life?
Yeah, I know the drill, so I know that it was coming. Um, and the thing that seemingly seems to be with me since a very, very long time and has come closer to me in the past months is the question of how does a life without fear look like, and how does it feel like? And that's something that that has been with me as long as I know myself, and it has gotten back to me. And it's a very, very intriguing and very confronting question.
Can you give me a sense of your relationship with that question today?
I can try. Um,
Be appreciated.
um, this question has been with me in a sense that I think for a big chunk of my life, I always felt that I was no. Let's cut it short. I was afraid for a very long period of my time, and I think I still am. It's fear and anxiety has been with me and has been very close and deeply ingrained within me, so that the question is there actually something? How does it feel if that's not there? And I had to realize that it's, in my own experience, there were not many times or periods or moments where I felt I'm completely out of fear. I'm completely out of this. And to give a little context, I grew up in East Germany under a communist regime. My father was a businessman, was an entrepreneur, and my mother was a Protestant teacher, kindergarten teacher. So, and if you kind of consider this combination of a reasonably oppressive system with a certain ideology, and then you have this couple as your parents, that's a tough one to live through. And there was the family doctrination. There was never show anyone how you feel, never tell anyone what you think, and don't ever go into conflict. It doesn't make sense, since you're gonna lose anyway, and you risk the survival of the business, and you risk the survival of the family. And so I grew up with a sense of an external threat all the time. We knew that there were spies around. We could point at them. And there was always the feeling of being under observation and being under surveillance and actually being in a very hostile place. And that's something that I, as a kid, together with my two siblings, also just like ingrained. That was just like embodied. It was down the spine in every cell. It was a subject that we even didn't really think about. It was just it was an external reality, and it was an internal condition. And it took me a pretty long time and a lot of confrontation to kind of finally find out that this has been with me all the time, and to kind of, get out of this is probably wrong. Get away from it is also wrong. It took me a long time to find a way on how to live with it.
You know, I think one of the great joys or privileges about this project is just hearing sentences from other people's lives that um, I have no experience of myself. Can you tell me what, even just that simple acknowledgement of knowing that there are spies around and you would even know who they were? What was that like, even through a child's eyes, I guess?
Well, if I step back into this time, which I haven't done for a long time, since that's what you're asking, actually, going back, stepping into little Ralph's world, it was just the constant feeling of it might be wrong what I'm doing.
Hmm.
And especially it was a fear. No, there was a sense of I have to check what I do and what I want to say or what I want to feel or what I want to express. Is this correct? Is this useful or is this justifiable? Couldn't that damage me or couldn't that damage the family or so? I think it's mostly that there is a very quickly a kind of a control mechanism on saying, can you say that? Probably not. Make it softer or not. Don't say it at all. Just swallow it down and move on. Yeah, it's an internal control mechanism that's there for the sake of whatever I might say or express physically or non-verbally might be mistaken and might be taken against me or the family.
So, Ralph, when you mentioned then you started to kind of meet this again as an adult, how did you even begin to kind of explore this sense of fear, or leaning into expression and what you were thinking and things of that nature?
Well, what happened was that without knowing, I was practically I was dissociating and I was, so to say, becoming two different persons. One was the one who could survive external observation and the one who was internally feeling and thinking freely. And I kind of over decades, I lost access and I lost contact to this internal free, wild child that I've once been before I entered school. And I didn't even know that this was gone. I was just experiencing over a long period of time restlessness and a building up frustration of a feeling of not being heard, of not being understood, and of not, yeah, and of losing a language in which I can actually share what I feel and how I feel and what I want to say and what not. So that is as if I lost a vocabulary, an entire register of how I actually could express who I am, what I feel, what I want, and what I need. And you don't need much fantasy to kind of imagine where this leads to. So this leads into a lot of difficult relationships, a lot of difficult conversations, and eventually into depression. Yeah. So I lived very much in my life. In my head, I lived very much in my life. That's an interesting term. I lived a very internal life, I feel. And I became an academic by coincidence, and was an absolute favor of social theories, which are highly unexplicably to anybody else. But I understood them, and there was a small crowd who really believed and who really understood. So, kind of an inside tribe thing that didn't make it much easier to kind of communicate openly and straightforwardly with an outside world. But actually, it ended in a breakdown where my body just refused to continue this show. Yeah, and I'm quoting David White here that Lucinda Millwood quoted in the other talk early on. If you cannot speak your own truth, you cannot live in your own body. And I think that's something that I experienced. And I think if you lose that access, if you cannot find this door or this valve by which you actually can express what you want to say and what, from your perspective of needs to be heard, again referring to your talk with Lucinda, you're just ending up in a very, very bad place.
Is there, by the way, when you mentioned just that inability to express, I think I've shared it on this podcast on maybe at least a couple of occasions, but I always remembered when I first went to see a therapist and she asked me, how do I feel? And I had to, I had to have 3 stabs at it. I gave her psychological theory, I think, the first time, and then an interpretation of a story. And she had to stop me eventually and go, but were you happy, sad, or whatever? And then I think after a moment, I could just say, yeah, I'm sad.
Yeah.
But from your point of view, like, was there, I know when you were saying about a depression, but was there a moment within that offered, like, when the show or the performance was so clear to you? Like, was there a moment of revelation within that, even if it was difficult and so on?
No, I think for a very long time, I didn't even know that I was performing, that I was dissociating, and that I was pointing to the outside world or showing to the outside world something else, that what was happening on the inside. I think coming from this childhood place, I was just trying my best to it feels like a bit like surviving. And it was only when the body said, no, fuck you, then a couple of things happened that I thought, okay, now I understand. That makes okay. So when suddenly a couple of walls just collapse and you see, that's behind, yeah. But I still remember when I had my first therapy session with my therapist here in Brussels. One of the key points that she was hammering back to me and said, Ralf, don't tell me the facts. Tell me how you feel. Stop reporting. I want to know what's behind the report. And I, in the beginning, was, what are you talking about? I'm just sharing everything. What's wrong with you? And it took me then the confrontation with theater and improv and clown, especially later on, to kind of say, that's what she means. But the report that I was given to me was coming from the heart and was truthful. And again, as I said before, I didn't have a vocabulary to actually express how I felt. And the worst moments, a good friend just looked me in the eyes and said to me, Ralf, do you know how unhappy you are? And I didn't know. But that kind of sentence made me think of, perhaps I am. Yeah.
When, from your perspective then, Ralf, did you start to, when did you start to almost like conceive of the possibility that I could experience a life, a moment, or anything without fear?
Yeah. I think that is a very recent moment when I discovered that there is actually a life or a mode of existence in which fear doesn't really play a role. And I don't actually know if we can share this publicly here, since it involved mushrooms and MDMA.
It's fine here.
No, there was a moment. So there was just a couple of months, a year ago, when I was kind of desperate, practically desperate to come into a state and come into a place where I actually could just be in a good place, just be happy and just relax and to enjoy a good time. And so I thought, there are ways and there are substances that actually could help you get there. And I have good friends who know much about this and can facilitate such processes. And so I found myself in a weekend retreat where we using mushrooms, where we're going on a trip. I've never done drugs before, and that was facilitated, and there were professionals in the room, so I felt reasonably safe. And the interesting thing that happened was in both cases with the mushrooms a year ago, and then 1 year later with another professional, I tried MDMA. In both occasions, after 10, 15, 20 minutes, I've been taking those substances, I fell asleep. I fell asleep for an hour. It was just gone. And one of those facilitators then said to me, well, Ralf, honestly speaking, I've never had such an experience that somebody would, after doing this and stepping into this, just fell asleep. And we both were pretty clear pretty clear about what actually was happening. And it was, my nervous system was just shutting down. My nervous system had the feeling of, here's something going on that I cannot control. And before I allow you to go into this process, I'm pulling the plug here. And I was deeply frustrated, as you can imagine, since I just wanted, doing this, trying this, and then having that response from my own nervous system. Oh, come on. And this professional then said to me, Ralf, honestly, I've never seen such a strong nervous system that can indicate threat and takes appropriate measures in that strength and in that force and in that speed. So be proud of that. And I thought, well, let's discuss this a bit. Yeah. So, and since I kind of started to reconnect and reconsider, reconnect and rediscuss and reapproach what my own nervous system actually does, how it has been prompted and primed earlier on, how I've been starting to kind of live and work with it, and start to understand that what I'm actually fighting against might be actually something that for a long time has been in my favor. And so to become friends with actually something that is just deeply trying to protect me.
It sounds quite nice when you put it like that.
Yeah. Well, still some kind of a, okay. There's a surrender to it in it, which I'm still not totally buy into. Saying I still want to be on the other side. And perhaps, to do justice to my nervous system and to do justice to the professional I was working with, I have to say that after he noticed what was happening with me after taking MDMA, he changed his approach to the procedure and said, let's make sure before we go on that your body and your nervous system feel safe. And he did this in a remarkable way. And the outcome was that over the remainder of the day, I could de-stress and my nervous system could relax. And that brought me actually finally to a place that I in that moment discovered as, oh, fear has gone. And that was a remarkable moment, since in that condition, it felt on the one hand as if it's something absolutely new and unfamiliar and half scary. And on the other side, it was like as if a very, very old memory would come up, that I've actually been once in the place and I can't even physically or mentally remember when that was. But it felt as I've been there before. It's an ages ago, but it's not totally new. So it was like a very, very ambivalent feeling of, I've no clue how that feels, and actually it feels really good. And on the other hand, yeah, I know this from somewhere.
That sounds totally remarkable. And I don't know, from all the conversations I have, I love the kind of sentiment, or like just the simple notion of remembering. And I don't know, I get this really strong sense that we've become so, I don't know, disembodied from our own human experiences, like en masse almost,
Mm.
that we've forgotten something remarkably simple.
Yeah.
When you had that experience, and when you, I don't know, re-entered life, life without the substance, what do you sense you kept from that? Like just the awareness or the experience that this did actually happen. What do you sense you took from that?
Um, it's 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 the bodily sensation that I try to keep awake within me, and I know, and I realize it's hard to keep this alive. And so I have certain moments in music and scent and memories in which I try here and there to bring me back into this condition, to say it's not gone, it's still there. And I noticed that it's very hard for me to do. It's not something that stayed with me ever since. I mean, it's a memory that is 4 months old. Um, and I realize how easy it is to kind of slip back into the old structure, into the old pattern. Um, and I experience this quite. It's work actually to keep the space and the yeah, to keep the inner space for this feeling to stay. So I kind of have to fight for it.
You know, it's interesting. Sometimes when I interview people, I've never spoke to them before, and sometimes, like in this case, and sometimes I may know the person, and sometimes in this case, I've spoken to you once before. I didn't think, based on what we had talked about before, and even your exploration of the clown, and things of this nature, fear, it wasn't something that I was picking up per se, that was so prevalent in your experience. Maybe it was just the idea that, oh, but this guy, he explores these things and he expresses these things. I was just curious from your own point of view, like how do you kind of even reflect on that?
Well, for me personally, there's a very strong link that which has to do with these two separated halves of myself. I well, after the wall came down, I was 20, and suddenly I could travel and I could go to university and I could explore a very different life than I had been living before, and I was truly enjoying that. Um, and and there was a cognitive relief there in this time after the wall has fallen down. But this internal condition of being fearful, of being afraid, and of being sort of noticing that there might be a threat out there that stayed for me. Um, and theater and improv and clown work came to me. Yeah, they literally came to me. I was not searching for it. It just happened to me. Um, in the middle of the depression was a place where I um, found conditions under which I could finally speak on impulse and could soften or deflect the inner critic and the inner high alert person who always considers, is that correct what you're saying? Can you say that or can you not? Um, and that was something that I surprisingly I was astonished in stepping into conditions under which is actually encouraged to say what you think and how you feel, to not be punished for it, and actually be appreciated for doing so. And what I understood and learned in especially in the improv theater work in the first place was, it's actually good if you stop overthinking things. It's actually good if you start listening to inner impulses and to inner conditions that are actually always there and actually are ready to be shared and to be shared and to be told to someone else. So the improv to me was a discovery of, yes, there are places in this world in where speaking what comes up spontaneously and unfiltered is actually not only appreciated, it's asked for. And there are actually even conditions that you can influence, that you feel safe to speak or that somebody else feels safe to speak. I did not know that this in that sense exists. And that was a revelation. There was a breakthrough. And once I stepped into this work, on a personal level, I could suddenly make decisions that I have been avoiding for years and years, and I couldn't do it. And stepping into this work gave me the confidence of, yes, well, listen to what your guts actually say and do accordingly. And it turned out that once I started to listen to the inner voice, to the other one, and had the courage to follow based on the safety experience from improv, I discovered that there is actually a second voice, not only the critical one, but another one that is actually always there, that has been always there, and is actually my friend. It's not my enemy, it's my friend. And I learned and understood that it's actually very relieving and very good if I would start following this voice. And the choices that I made from listening to this voice were actually belong to the best I made in my life. So that was in the first work in theater when I stepped into improv. That was the kind of the first experience where I thought, wow, actually there is a way of creating spaces in which I feel not only enabled but encouraged actually to speak what's in there without any risk of punishment or whatever. And people can actually work with and enjoy working with whatever comes out of me from this.
So, Ralf, can you think of was there a particular moment where that became particularly clear to you, or was this an accumulation of experiences?
Oh, no, there's very one. It was very in the beginning. I found myself in a 5-day improv beginners workshop in Heidelberg in Germany. And I had absolutely no idea of what was going on, how this works. So I was really a beginner. I did not know. I did not had no idea about the mechanics of the art form. And we were having 5 days in a secondary school in a music room with a piano in there. And after 2.5 days, where you practically just do exercises by which you start to relax and mistakes don't matter and you become very playful, and so judgment is gone. After that was gone, we started to do a scene work, and we started to learn how you start an improv scene by creating a platform, very technical, define the place, define who you are, define the relationship, and then work with it. And the first exercise that we actually did there was pair work. And in this pair work, the first of the pair had to enter the stage, had to do something by which it becomes clear where he or she was, so creating the location. He or she had to do something to define who she was or he was. And as quick as that is clear, the second person enters, confirms the location, confirms the other character, builds its own character, and forms the relationship. So that's how you build a platform. So, and my partner just went on stage and sat down on the piano, since it was a musical room, it's a piano, and started to play. And to me, that was absolutely clear and very obvious. So this is a musical scene. This is a musical teacher, and I'm the student, and he is going to teach me something about whatever music, piano or whatever. And so everything was clear to me. I was entering the stage. I was approaching him, being fully clear what this scene was about. I inhaled, and before I could exhale and say anything, he turned to me and said, "Are you going to sing Unchain My Heart tonight, Joe?" And I just wanted to kill him. You bastard. And in that moment, I had to make a choice of either blocking the offer and saying, nah, that's a good joke, and let's continue with our piano lessons, and sort of say, push me onto the scene, or I could accept and say, yeah, okay, if you think that I'm Joe Cocker, well, then I fucking am Joe Cocker. So, and under normal circumstances, I would have never accepted. But something made me, in that moment, and I don't know where this choice came from, I said, okay, you idiot, let's do this. And I said, yeah, of course I'm going to sing this, but we're not going to do this in A minor, we're going to do this in D major. Can you give me the keys? And so we started fiddling, and then I started to sing the first two lines of the chorus, and then I stopped because I didn't know any more text. But the thing was that I didn't have to sing any further because the crowd was just erupting. They were just laughing and cheering and applauding since they understood what was going on. And that was a moment of absolute relief and of discovery of that something else is possible than just the fearful refusal of challenge.
Can't help but ask you, like, do you sense that fear existed in the moment after it, or was that one of those moments as well where it may have been absent?
I think that was the moment when it was gone. Since the realization that I had after, and I think it's good that we talk about it, since it's like it helps my body to memorize that there have been much more of those moments where fear was actually gone. And I might have been much fearless than I believe I was. The thing that I understood there in that moment was that I don't know how old I was, 42 years, and I have inhaled, and my body has saved and stored enough knowledge from 42 years of my life that I actually am able to survive any difficult situation regardless of the circumstances. There is enough there. I just need to allow my body and my mind to react without the filter. And the notion was actually everything is there. And I had very difficult teaching situations before that. And I thought, you don't have to worry that much and that hard, Ralf, because everything is already in. Just relax, not in a calming down attitude, but relax and allow your body to give your body the liberty to respond how the body needs and wants to respond, and everything will be there. Everything is there. You don't have to worry about.
So, but that's a gorgeous distinction.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fall into that trivial nonsense of you're under threat. Just relax.
Yeah, relax, man.
Just relax. Yeah. But that's beautiful.
Yeah, and it coincided with an experience that I had with physical practice like yoga, that if your body is relaxed and you have space in the body, then actually emotional and cognitive tension can release also. But if the body is tight, nothing else can actually happen. As if there is a sequence of create space in your body, and emotional tensions will release into that space. And once the emotional space is there, the cognitive tension will release finally. So that was So that's my holy trio. So between psychotherapy, we spoke about that, yoga as creating space in your physicality, and improv and clown as a form of reconnecting with what is there, with what is within, connecting with an audience or with partners who actually are there to support you, and actually then finding that the connection between the outside energy in an audience or with partners and the inside emotional energy and the charging, if you let them meet without interference by the brain, then the real fun actually starts. Then you surf, and then you witness things in a connection with anybody else, regardless of whether that's hostile or not. That actually the real joy begins there, since you start really co-creating with what and with whom is in the room.
It makes me think of just the significance of coherence, regardless of whether it's in an overly loving and agreeable situation, or if there is tension or something has to be met.
Yeah.
It's like a collective greeting of reality in whatever that means. Ralph, maybe before the next question materializes in my head, would you mind just singing the first 2 lines of that song again?
Unchained heart, baby, set me free.
Thank you very much. I just wanted, the question I did want to ask though was,
honestly,
you mentioned just, sorry there, carry on, just
I
whatever you were going to say.
I was just wondering, after I was in that place of the story, shall I sing or shall I not? And since I didn't afterwards, I actually regretted not singing. So thank you for bringing it back.
Wonderful. The question I did have though was just around, you mentioned how the act of people valuing what was coming from within you, and how that altered how you made decisions, and I guess the kinds of decisions you were making. Can you give me even an example of something? It doesn't have to be within that immediate time frame, but just throughout life, that you would kind of classify as one of your best decisions that would have been maybe surprising at a previous time in life?
Yeah, well, there was one particular moment 7 years after I entered the school that I've been working for 15 years. And by the time, in the very beginning, I was in a very hostile situation, in a teaching situation. And I had no idea on how I could handle this situation back then. And 7 years later, after stepping into psychotherapy, into yoga, and finally into theater, a similar situation occurred where I lost a class. So the participants were practically stepping out of the room because they didn't see any point of what I was doing with them, which to me was a highly scary moment, since it's reminded me of a previous event where I lost a class. And it might take a moment until I come back to the original question of you. The thing was that when this happened again 7 years later, I was having tons of trainings in improv and tons of trainings in clown. Started to work on an own show, and clown show by that. And both practices have given me over the years the confidence, without me really consciously noticing or registering this, that there's actually enough, that I can actually trust intuitive responses that come in the moment. And 7 years ago, before that moment, or 1 year or 2 years before that moment, I most likely could not have trusted and could not have really acted upon this. But in this moment, I had my clown nose with me. I had it in the bag of my teaching, in my teaching bag. I always carried it around with me. And I saw that the class was falling apart. And I was working with senior level bankers 25 of them. So the stakes were high, and actually I cannot risk losing a class like this. So the pressure was on. And I had no idea what I could do after half of people just left the class. And the only thing that I could think of in that moment was to stop the class, to give a break so that everybody was out. I closed the door. I looked into my bag. I took out the clown nose. I put the clown nose on, and I just inhaled into the nose, and my eyes were closed. And I was just in the little small distance between the tip of my nose and the tip of the clown nose, of the plastic. And I had a couple of seconds there with me being fully alone. And then the idea came from very deep down, okay, this is what you're going to do. And so I took the clown nose off. I invited class back. I let them sit down. And I just asked them, what do you think was happening right now? And they said, yeah, there's nothing to do with us, and it's far away. So I was doing dancing exercise with them, so I understood. So what do you think was happening in that moment? You realized that you were not, what we were doing has nothing to do with with the problem that you were having while you're here. How do you consider what was happening in the connection and the relation between you as class and me? And they said, yeah, well, I didn't understand what this was about, and I didn't know what you wanted from me, and I didn't know what this had to do with me and my challenges at work. And I said, yeah, okay. So practically the connection between you as class and me was broken. And then that was all that came to me in the moment of the nose. I said, work with it. Don't deny it. Don't blow up smoke. Don't run away. Just accept what is and work with it. And that brought me to this place where I asked them what happened, and to make sense of the connection between class and me was broken. And what was happening to me, there was a second thought coming up in that moment and say, okay, did that ever happen to you with your clients? And there was a silence in the room, and you could hear a needle drop. And one guy with gray hair in his late 40s, beginning of 50s said, yeah, those were the most horrible moments in my professional career. And I thought, thank you. And I said, okay. And with this confirmation, it was clear for everybody that what happened coincidentally without me actually wanting it was actually a core theme that is very relevant to them. And I produced it without wanting it. And so, again, the next thought came from my guts and saying, okay, so we have been having a broken connection here. And we have 90 minutes to find ways on how we can heal a broken connection. What can you do in order to heal the connection with me? What can I do in order to heal the connection with you? And let's find out how that works. And second, how we can transform this into useful knowledge for you. And it was one of the most intensive and most satisfying teaching situations that I ever had. Since the script collapsed entirely, I was going down the rabbit hole of fear, and something was coming to my rescue that I knew was there, and I knew for some reason I could rely upon. And I was drained and exhausted and dead after, but I was the luckiest bloke on earth. Since it was like a confirmation, my guts are right. And there is no point of running away, and there is no point of blowing up smoke. But if you stay in the discomfort, and if you stay in the fear, and if you go where the fear is, and you stay there, there's actually something waiting for you that is much more beautiful than the things that you could have been thinking of or making up as a way to quickly escape and to run away. And that's actually one of the core things that clown work has given to me. It's not about being funny or not about being silly or so. It's clowns hate to make mistakes, and they are absolutely uncomfortable when they are in the place of a fuck up. the point what the clown is doing is he's not running away. He's not blowing up smoke. He's making it bigger. So he does something and he fails again, and it's not working. And he does it again, and it's getting even bigger. And he has to work until the end. And you don't know where the end is. You only know when the end is, that a solution occurs to you that you could not think of before. And then you just have to take the solution. But you have to stay in the discomfort until something is revealing to you. And that was a kind of work for me where I found a very different access to what I'm actually afraid of. It's of failing, of not being good enough, of being at risk, of being in a vulnerable place. And the original training to me, or indoctrination, was shut up, hide, and disappear. And that work has brought me into a place of no, don't, just don't. Just stay there, stay connected with the ground, stay connected with yourself, and stay connected with the audience, and receive what's there. And if you do this in a relaxed manner, you really can trust that something will come both from the inside and from the outside to your rescue, that will turn your situation not only into a sheer exit of a problematic situation, but actually can turn it into something beautiful.
I think as well, though, it's the freedom that comes from just not trying to pretend something is anything other than it is.
Yes.
And it's kind of funny, whatever the outcome is from that, if that was the place from which we arrived, the process is the gift almost, or the experience is the gift.
Yes. I think the experience of staying and of facing what is without an aggression or without a denial, but with an attention, with a focused attention, and with a sense of presence. I don't like the term anymore since it's everywhere and it has gotten hollow. But if you see what is around you, if you see what is in the room, everything is your friend.
You know, I hold some similar misgivings around the word presence, but I remember I held a silent conversation once where somebody I asked the group a question, and then they have 10 minutes of silence to contemplate this, right? So a guy came out of the 10 minutes of silence, and he was the first to respond when I said, did anyone have any thoughts or experiences they wanted to share? And he said, Mark, I heard the question, and all I thought for the 10 minutes was, what a stupid fucking question. And all I thought was, it was obviously too profound for him. No. But that was his experience with it. And I think what I love if presence and what it means to me is that's presence is almost cloaked in this nonsense of we must all agree, we must all. Do you know what I mean? Like, it almost has these connotations to it. But presence, as far as I'm concerned, is can we just acknowledge what's here, mm-hmm. and can we stay here? Yeah. And what you're saying, and so beautifully illustrated by that example, is that that's the only point from which we can really connect. Mm-hmm. And anything that we thought was connection before access to that was just some kind of diluted sense of it. Yeah. But even there's just a potential of a supercharge of connection, whether we agree or see things the same way or not, which I think is really, I don't know, it feels like a really colossal component of this life.
Yes, it's a very fragile and very charged state where there is no hiding anymore. And I mean, it requires an amount of acceptance of that I am as I am in this moment, and that you are as you are in this moment, and that the conditions are as the conditions are in this moment, and that it is actually enough to work with.
Can you expand a little upon that sense of there is no hiding and this almost immediate paradox that comes into my head? There is no hiding with the clown almost. And I have this idea of also of a mask or a distortion on my face or something like that. But I just love how you've described even that the clown, it gets bigger and bigger and he stays with it. Can you talk to me a little bit about that sense of both the clown and there is no hiding?
Yeah, it's a funny thing that this tiny little red piece of plastic in your face is actually altering everything. Clown work is part of mask work, which is a much bigger theatrical realm and practice. And the interesting thing is with this work, I mean, there are many different layers. I could talk endlessly about this, but the thing that fascinates me is you put something in your face. That means you hide part of your face. And something clicks in the rest of you that, as if it's given a license to come to the fore, that it never felt safe enough to do without it. So you hide something, you veil something, and that gives, I don't know how, the rest of the body or your psyche the feeling of, yeah, I can now show something entirely different because anybody who sees me is not seeing me. And the most interesting thing for me is like both clown and half mask, where only part of your face is covered with a mask. So the mask and the rest of your face melts into something completely new. And the audience really doesn't see you anymore. They see a combination of the character in the clown, or in the mask, sorry, and something of you. And they see something new. And it is as if your body knows that I can show things because the audience sees something else. That is the little thing the little sense that I can make of. You veil something and it is revealing a lot, while the audience cannot look through what comes from the mask and what comes from the actor. So it's still confusion. You cannot say, oh, this was Ralph and this was the mask. No, it's just like, but as if, well, I can tell you the incident. I was in a mask workshop with a wonderful clown teacher and director, Lee Long, and we were both wanting to build on a red nose solo clown show. And before she goes into into the clown work, and before she hands out the noses, she has started to work with very cheap, simple things that you find in carnival stores. So like glasses and mustache and ears and whatever. And there was a little very cheap €2.50 plastic quarter mask lying on the table. And I look at this and the instant feeling is I want to try this. And so I put this quarter mask on, which just covers my nose and my cheeks. That's all. And in the minute I have this in my face, my entire physicality changes. So my body alters, my voice pitch changes. And with costume and wig, no one sees Ralph anymore. I turn into someone completely different. And in that moment, her eyes and mine met, and we just were like, let's find out who this guy is. That was such a profound experience that I have a piece of plastic in my face and everything alters without me making a conscious choice of how I want to work with this mask. The mask altered me, and masked people usually say it's not you who chooses the mask, it's the mask who chooses you. And so it has, on a psychodynamic level, a huge amount of release of whatever has been hiding, whatever has been stored and couldn't show up. You veil parts of your face, and suddenly something comes to the fore that never dared to come. And if you go from mask work to red nose clown work in theater, then they say the nose is the tiniest mask of the world. And once you work with the nose, then you're actually working with the most truthful and most authentic, another of these loaded words, side of yourself can come to the fore. And I like to work more with the idea of truthfulness rather than of authenticity. Since then, with the nose, your inner child comes up that is uneducated and raw and wants to speak as it wants to speak and ramble around as it wants to ramble around, and is not socialized and not indoctrinated by socialization. And so it's the most fragile is wrong, but the most truthful and unfiltered part of yourself that the nose reveals. And it took me a while until I understood when I put on the nose, I can do everything. You just can do literally everything. Don't tell that to anyone, but you put it in your nose and you can go out into the streets and you can do everything you want. And people will respond and they will understand, and they know, oh, it's a clown. And so it had an absolutely liberating effect upon me, since with the nose, it's like a protection. You can flirt openly in the street. You can yell at somebody. You can copy somebody in the most bizarre and comedic way. And it's very unlikely that you're going to get attacked. It's like as if something, as if this theater in general, but I think mask work and clown work in particular, is a form of kind of awakening things in parts of yourself that have been dormant for a long period of your time.
But isn't that so absurd? Like, and by that I mean, like, doesn't it tell us something about the absurdity of what we hold to be true and proper, and all these things you mentioned around socialization, and even going back to your youth and thinking of all the things that you had to filter yourself through? If that can all be undone by putting a red nose on our nose, like, I don't know, I find that kind of stunning to even to contemplate.
Yeah.
This isn't a commentary on you now. I just mean on us as ourselves and as a social convention.
Yes.
Because I've even had the feeling of when I've dressed up as Halloween as something, just feeling totally altered or liberated even before I've, throw alcohol onto that. And of course, sure, then it's, but just with the costume itself, there's a total liberation.
Yeah.
Just Ralph, when we started off with how can one experience a life almost, or how could life be experienced without fear? Describing the intensity of your youth and the various layers of that contributed to a sense of not feeling like you could express your inner world or what you were thinking or feeling. Then where that brought you, but then also your explorations that have come on the other side of that, and the way in which even your explorations of theatre or clown work have opened up spaces or avenues to reinforce the significance of not only our intuition, but how people respond to that, and how we can feel as humans even within that space, and the choices that allows us to make, to just even the, clearly acknowledging many moments that seem to have been free of fear as well, beyond your experiences, whether it was with mushrooms or MDMA as well. I'm really intrigued to ask you the question, Ralph, of what is a good life for you?
I'm inclined to say a good life is a life without fear. And at the same time, as I'm saying it, I'm kind of almost want to call it back and say, well, it's probably not about that. I think I had good moments. I had really good moments in my life where fear was my partner. And I'm not there yet to say she's my friend, but I'm kind of glad that she's there. But I feel a good life is a life in which it's a life in which I have a good relationship with fear, and a good life is a life in which I have a condition under which I can speak my truth, and I'm heard and I'm seen, and I can provide the same thing to somebody else in the same minute or in another minute. But I think a good life is one where there is a quality of connection that allows for the truth to come up and to be shared and to be acknowledged, not necessarily agreed with, but acknowledged.
You know, when you mentioned the "I'm glad she's there," I felt like a kind of a goosebumps on me. I think there was something that I'll take with me from this and sit with for a while myself, because I
Oh,
thought that was really beautiful. Ralph, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I had no idea where it was going or where it would go, but it gave me the kind of feeling that I was probably hoping for before we started. So, look, thank you so much for joining us today on the What is a Good Life podcast. I'm really grateful for that.
thank you. I discovered quite a lot about myself and how I tell my story and my stories, and I was looking forward to this hour with you because I was hoping to I could deviate from the way I think and feel and talk about myself and discover new gaps. And I found them.